The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stein's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, living dead and undead. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I am your host, Isaiah Vargas. I'm joined by my good buddies Bjorn Palanick and Nick Shaw. We are the Goosebumps Crew, and we are back to talk some Goosebumps. If this is your first time joining us here on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, I want to sincerely welcome you all. If you are or have ever been a fan of the popular Goosebumps series of books or the monster franchise that they spawned, I have a feeling this podcast is going to be right up your alley. As I always say, me, Bjorn, and Nick are some of the biggest Goosebumps nerds on the entire planet. We could talk about Goosebumps for hours on end. That is exactly what we do here on this podcast. Every week we have a brand new episode talking about everything Goosebumps, whether it be the books, TV shows, movies, video games, merchandise, whatever it is. If it has Goosebumps in the name, we're going to talk about it until you cannot stand the word Goosebumps anymore. It's going to be like a trigger word in like PTSD or something like that. That's what it's going to come to. But with all that said, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the Goosebumps Crew YouTube channel and hit the bell notification to get updates when new episodes go up every Wednesday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you are, however, just dying to get those episodes early, you can follow them over on our audio platforms. We are available on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes, audio-only versions, go up every Tuesday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, so you can get those versions a day before they go up over on YouTube. And of course, you can follow the Goosebumps Crew over on social media. We are available on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Saucy Fan and Sean, respectively, on their social medias and their YouTubes. All those links are in the description below, so check them out. Join the Goosebumps Crew today, become a crew member. We thank you in advance for your support. So, Goosebumps The Vanishing is finally out on Disney Plus and Hulu. This season has been teased ever since February of 2024, not too long after the first season ended in November of 2023. Now, for those who have been following the Goosebumps Crew for a while now, our very first episode here on the podcast was our review of the, at the time, recently concluded Season 1. Now we are back after all this time to review the brand new Season 2 of this new Disney Goosebumps reboot. And just a little history here. As I said, the season got teased back in February, just saying that it was renewed for Season 2. Shortly after, we learned that some of the new cast would include David Schwimmer as Dr. Brewer, and some of the new teen cast members would be supposedly filling out Stay Out of the Basement for this season. They had said that the new season was going to follow a completely different cast, new story, new location, and all that jazz, plus new book adaptations. Going off of our thoughts on Season 1, they were not all that pleasant. Me personally, I was a little more meh on the season, though I lean towards not liking it. Bjorn and Nick, on the other hand, did not like it at all. I don't think one iota. Overall, it came down to the writing and just the overall direction that they decided to go with this new reboot. We are very fond, of course, being fans of mostly the 90s era of the 90s Goosebumps show, which was a full adaptation. Every episode was a brand new story. This new season tried to go the more continued throughout the season storyline with adaptations of the books throughout, but not only were the adaptations not super faithful, in some cases it was egregious how unfaithful they were.
Clickbait titles.
Yes, yeah, titles that were used as a clickbait, basically. And overall, just the overall writing, lots of focus on melodrama, teen romance, love triangles, adultery. The hell was that doing in
That
Goosebumps?
all screams Goosebumps to me, bro.
Well,
What are you talking
I've
about?
always said Goosebumps
Don't
season
you
one
remember
feels more
reading
like it would
Steins'
belong.
greatest hits?
Exactly.
You know, about adultery and love triangles and all that stuff. I mean,
It was
those
like,
were the best books here, bro.
oh man, it was like something that felt more at home in Fear Street. Like it was crazy how much it didn't feel like Goosebumps, but at the same time, we did compliment the acting. We did compliment some of the effects done. More namely, the best episode of the season, which was "Go Eat Worms," had actually a very good concept that I personally feel outdid both the book and the '90s episode, which was surprising. So it has at least that going for it. We really liked Slappy from that season. I feel like this new reboot actually did a good Slappy interpretation with a pretty interesting
In the beginning,
backstory. What was that?
in the beginning, yeah.
Well, in the beginning, yeah, but then it kind of devolved. But
So you realize he doesn't do anything. He just kind of he tells somebody else to do something. Hey, you say the words. Say the words. Kill him. Kill him. Okay. Well,
I mean, I kind
thanks,
of like
Slappy.
that though
I did it.
because I liked Slappy almost being like a manipulator. I like
No.
he sort of acts vicariously through others, but yeah, your opinion may vary.
Nope. I like my hands-on Slappy where it's wearing a person wearing a Slappy suit, putting their hands like this, going and tripping kids on a rug. That's my
saying
Slappy.
abracadabra. Oh, I
Hands
love that
on.
trick.
Hands on. Hands on Slappy.
My point is that our opinions on season one were very mixed, very leaning towards we didn't like it. So there was a lot of skepticism going into season two. Of course, we did an episode giving our predictions on season two just a few months ago, and the promotional material was better. It made me a little more interested to see this season based on how they cut it all together. But of course, we had to wait until the season dropped to give our full opinion, and the season has dropped. It's been out for a week at this point since the time of recording this interview or this recording. And now it's time to give our thoughts on Goosebumps, The Vanishing. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with our general spoiler-free thoughts. We're going to just give our general thoughts on the season. For those of you who have not seen this, we'll keep it spoiler-free for now, but we are going to warn you that we are going to get into spoilers later in this video. We'll make sure to put a time code up, and of course, we'll give you a spoiler warning. So if you have not seen Goosebumps The Vanishing, make sure you pay attention to that timestamp, click off the video, go watch it for yourself, and then come back. But first, we'll keep things spoiler-free. So, Goosebumps The Vanishing, I guess I'll start with my personal opinions. Going into the season, I just wanted this to feel more like Goosebumps because I feel like that was one of my biggest concerns going into this one, and definitely one of my biggest detractors from last season. And I personally walked away feeling this was a pretty big improvement over season one. This season is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There are still many, many flaws with it, most of which we'll get into in our spoiler section. But going over the things I did like, I do feel like they leaned more into the sort of campy, gross aspect of Goosebumps. There's a lot of creepy monsters in this season, lots of goop. There's goop everywhere, very in tune with the Goosebumps sort of slimy nature. I do feel the adaptations, while still not incredibly faithful, some of them I feel are either take away certain more things from the books than last season did, or they recontextualize it in a way that works for what they're going for. There is an episode that deals with a heavy format change that actually I feel improves the overall nature of that story. In a sense, it's still heavily changed, but for what they're going for the season, progressing that story, I feel like it works. I feel the overall narrative is much more flowing. There is not a whole lot of breaking from the narrative like there was in season one. Because in season one, you had the Harold Biddle story. That was the big skeleton of the season. But then, of course, you had all, as the aforementioned, teen drama, romances, love triangles. You had all this stuff with the adult characters. A lot of that's toned down this season. The teen characters, I feel, are much better, much easier to follow. I feel like they're not as stereotypical in a sense. I feel like they're more interesting to follow in terms of their arcs. They have clear arcs that they go through. And I do think that there are more episodes this season that I enjoyed more than last season. So overall, I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10. I may be possible though, I bump it down to a 6.5 for reasons that we'll get into in spoilers. But I did feel like this season had a much more clear goal. I feel like it leaned into some of the more campy aspects a little more. And I felt that the characters, particularly David Schwimmer as Dr. Brewer, some of the character performances were much better. And I just felt like it was an overall entertaining yet flawed experience. So I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10. Bjorn, let's go to you first. Now, again, as I said, you did not like season 1 at all, and I know you weren't particularly looking forward to season 2. How did you end up walking away from this season?
Well, like with season 1, it just didn't feel like Goosebumps. And a lot of people were trying to tell me, interesting enough, how can you be a Goosebumps fan if you don't enjoy this? And I'm like, that's ridiculous, being told I can't be a Goosebumps fan because I'm not enjoying something that isn't Goosebumps. Do you know what I mean? So that was really just stupid. And like we agreed, I think Go Eat Worms was the strongest other than Night of the Living Dummy episode. Well, part 1, part 2 sucked. Yeah. That's how I felt about season 1. And then going into this season, I was just not keen on it at all because I was just burnt too hard with season 1 that I just didn't even want to give this one a chance. But then when I heard David Schwimmer was going to be in it, I was like, oh, that's interesting because I like Friends. I like David Schwimmer. I think he's he plays the goofball really well, and I think he might accent that well into this. So he actually was the standout for me in this season. I think a lot of the kid actors, though, were all really good, too. A lot of the teens. I just think that's what made this better for me was the performances from the actual actors and the teens was so much better than season 1. It was very cringy in season 1. There was a couple good performances, like particularly Ben Cockell as Harold Biddle. I think he was probably the standout of all the kids. But this season, I think they were all good. Like, I didn't really think any one of them was doing a bad job. I think they all did really well. And I do like that it went more the goofy gross because it did feel a little more like Goosebumps because of that. And season 1 it was lacking in so many areas that it just felt so, bland and lackluster. And I mean, although there was some creepy moments, this one kind of had the creepy moments, but also the gross side of Goosebumps. So I like that. I like the little references to certain things, but obviously won't get into that until we talk about our spoilers because some of them are actually really fun. I think this season overall was definitely better. So I kind of ate my words a little bit. I did watch the first 2 episodes and I was kind of disappointed, but then I started again. I watched them and then I went through the whole thing, and then by the end, I kind of went, okay, that was a step up. Like, it was definitely a step up. There's things that are flawed that I would have definitely changed, but it felt more like Goosebumps. Like, I give season 1 a 4 out of 10. This season, I give a 5.756. Like, you know what I mean? So this one passed for me. It definitely passed. Because there was definitely things I really enjoyed, and there was other things that I just were like, I don't know. But what made the season better was it flowed better, and also the performances from the actors were definitely more top tier. Just very believable, a lot more believable. Especially when you got Andrew McCarthy's son in there playing Devon. That was pretty awesome. I'm a huge fan of him. Obviously, we know him from like Pretty in Pink and all those films back in the 80s. So kind of cool that his son was in this. But yeah, so I did enjoy this season more. It was more enjoyable.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. It's like I agree. I sat there and I was way more interested in this season than season one, because season one was so jerky with its narrative that it just kind of turned me off a lot of the time. It was just kind of like so many things to follow, so many other characters. This season cut down the number of characters. It cut down on the subplots that didn't add to the overall narrative. Even some of the vignettes still tied in with the bigger picture. So it just felt more tied together. It didn't feel like it was just jumping around from place to place. And thus it allows you more time to flesh out things that wouldn't have been otherwise.
It felt more binge worthy. Like I felt like when I was watching it, I was like, I can actually sit through and watch the whole thing. Season one, I kind of would watch 2 or 3, and then I'd be like, I'm having a break. And then one thing I will give this season credit, and I was a little skeptic about it at first, but dropping the full season at one moment instead of doing 5 and then each succinct episode every week, I felt helped it more. Because the thing with season one was like you had the first 5 episodes the same day, and then you had to wait the next week for the next one, and then the next week, and then the next week. And it kind of added to the disappointment of when one is bad, because you're hoping, praying that things start to turn around, and then it doesn't, and then you're just like, I waited a whole week for that freaking crap. And also major props to keeping a full story from beginning to end and not pivoting so hard in the last 2 episodes like season 1 did, because season 1, honestly, here's something. Is
that a Ross joke?
Well, no, but maybe an unintentional one. No, my point is, and again, we'll get more into it in spoilers. I actually feel this season would have benefited from 10 episodes, whereas I felt season 1 should have cut the last 2 episodes and kept it at 8. Yeah. Because season 1's story essentially ended at episode 8, but then they're like, oh shit, we got 2 more episodes. So they shoehorned a whole thing in with Slappy and Kondu and this giant ritual that involved people being turned into dummies and a big sacrifice. And it was like,
fake Horrorland.
Where the fuck did this come from?
Fake Horrorland.
Fake Horrorland. Yeah, that's another thing. Again, clickbait titles. Welcome to Horrorland had
killed that.
Nothing to do with Horrorland.
I think that was the hope everyone had, was like, oh my God, we do have Horrorland coming up though. Like, we're actually going to get Horrorland. And then it was like, no. Yeah. So it was like, why would you do that? Like, that was the biggest letdown in that entire show, was clickbaiting that title to Horrorland.
Exactly.
So I was like, well, thank you for that. But then I kind of thought, well, it's only 1 episode too. Like, how can they do Horrorland in 1 episode? You know?
But again, I feel like
it would be a finale, and then if they were going to get another season, it would be the continuation. Horrorland for the first episode of the new season, and then pick up wherever else. But
season 1's ending felt
don't have
very
to worry about it. Horrorland.
And not in like a goosebumpy way. It just felt like it was a blatant like tease for another season. Obviously a season that did not get made because they went the anthology route. This season, when they said it was going to be an anthology, they didn't mean like the original series. It's going more of like an American Horror Story route of anthology series, where it's the seasons that are different stories instead of the episodes. So
hopefully season 3 will be Welcome to Dead House as the main. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
that is the main focus.
I actually
like Terror
Tower. Kind of already took the same story from season 1 and threw it into 2, because it's just a different group of characters. And so you still got stuff from the past affecting stuff from today, and you're jumping back and forth. But, like you guys already said, just get my 2 cents in on this before we move to spoilers. It's just exactly what you guys said. I mean, it's a more coherent story. It was actually like kept me involved enough to want to keep watching. Whereas season 1, I was on my phone pretty much like 10 minutes into an episode, because I was just like bored to tears, or just thought this is garbage. because again, I don't quite remember Stein ever writing adultery stories, or why are these kids who are supposed to be teenagers look like they're in their mid to late 20s? Oh, okay. I mean, I get that shows do this all the time, but it was like, come on, dude. I mean, the whole point of Goosebumps was you were supposed to have kids going through these stories, not adults who are playing teenagers going through these stories.
That's a part of it.
We'll give credit where credit's due, like we talked about for this season. The acting in this season was far superior, at least for the kids, compared to season one. Now, I love Justin Long.
And no detriment to the actors in season one. We don't mean this as any disrespect. I feel they did
not that they're watching this.
I feel they did the best that they could. It's hard to be like sort of a teen actor, and
they got a bad script.
Just have a shit script, like no amount.
I don't like sand.
And again, super special shout out to Ben Cockel, who I thought actually really did a great job in season one. Hope we can bring him back on.
I thought he, again, like I agree with Bjorn, he was easily my favorite actor from the kids version.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, realistically, and I'm not saying that just because he came on our podcast. Like, the reason why I was more than okay with him coming on the podcast because he was my favorite part of the first season. Like, I liked his character. I liked his arc. He did a great job of acting. I kind of feel, again, he got a shit script because his story ended so abruptly in episode 8 when there was 2 episodes left that they could have fleshed out a bit more. And I know I've said it before, but the whole turn of his character in that one episode in those 5 minutes pissed me off so much. Like, just because somebody he's no idea who the person is, mind you, he had no idea who this person is, calls him, what was his nickname his parents gave him?
Hair Bear.
Yeah, Hair Bear.
Because one character says Hair Bear.
One character who he doesn't really know, despite the fact that his parents, were trying to turn him back to the good side. It's like the Anakin story, trying to turn back to the good side.
The last time that he saw his parents, like,
Hair Bear, but
they were trying to be nice to him, and he turned them into fucking dummies. So it was like, obviously it didn't work the first time.
But some random person he's never really talked to or cares about says Hair Bear. And he's
One
like,
thing I will say, and I don't mean to. Folks at home, we don't mean to talk about season 1 so much. This is a season 2 review, but one more thing I want to bring up.
But you kind of have to because it's comparison.
One thing I do like about season 1, looking back on it, and I don't know if I mentioned this in our review of season 1, I actually did like that when somebody turned into a dummy, like, they're dead. Like, there's no coming back from it. Like, they're just dead. I felt that made it a little scarier because they're trapped like that forever, and they're.
I didn't even know they were dead until like the end. They were like, "Oh yeah, no, these people are dead." It's like, oh, okay. They never really established that. They could have just been turned into dummies, and their souls are strapped in there.
I didn't say it was thing all over, but it was just a concept.
It wasn't. It wasn't. I'm just saying.
It's the adult version. Like, My Living Dummy was always Slappy would turn you into a dummy, but then you come back and you're fine. Well, apart from Zane having still somewhat supernatural powers, but in this version, it's like, no, this is more an adult version, so you're just going to die.
Like, you're just dead, and like, that's it. I thought that was a cool concept. Could have been explained better, but I thought it was a cool concept.
Yeah.
So going back to season 2, so we talked a lot about the positives so far. So it is a much more coherent story. It's got a lot more. It's got a little more references to the books than season 1 does. You could tell that the writers did a little more homework this time around when it came to the adaptations. They're still not super faithful.
Yeah, they just didn't read the blurb at the back of the book.
Yeah, they actually read, maybe like skimmed through the actual book instead of just the back of the blurb. Let's say it like that.
Got some cliff notes.
But I also think that in going off of like just the coherency, I felt that tying in the adaptations of the books with the overall narrative, especially since the overall narrative is based on an adaptation, it just made it feel more like Goosebumps. And basically, because how season 1 did it was like, oh, Harold Biddle just so happened to be into ventriloquism and cameras and masks and worms and cuckoo clocks and like all these things. It was just like he just so happened to be interested in all these very, very niche things. Just so,
and they never explained how any of those items became mystified.
Yeah,
all magical items.
They just happened to be.
They just were
haunted, I guess.
They just were.
No rhyme or reason, and also those things never come back into play. Like the camera, the mask, the only thing really is the clones. But like even then, the clones are kind of done away with halfway through the season.
And then the clones.
Personally, I know we dog on Living Dummy Part 2, but I gotta say, if there was an episode I hated the most from season 1, it was Cuckoo Clock of Doom. Because I mean, talk about God. Just even. Maybe this is blasphemous to say, but even Haunted Mask at least had the bare bones idea of the story in there. Cuckoo Clock, there was nothing. The only thing was that there is a cuckoo clock and there is a somewhat time loop, but then it's clones. It's clones that they have to multiple times say that they smell like watermelon Jelly Ranchers. Like, it wasn't funny the first time. What makes you think it's going to be funny the third time? So, personally, that's the episode that pisses me.
Third time's the charm.
But one thing I will say, though, is that for all of Season 2's improvements, there are still things from Season 1 that carry over, and they're just as annoying, albeit toned down. So, we talk about all this teen melodrama. There is still some... There is still some there. There is particularly a love triangle between some of the main characters, particularly Devin and his crush Frankie, who is dating Trey. Now Trey's a huge asshole. He does have a good arc. I will say these characters go through arcs. So like where they may be unlikable at first, I feel they become more likable as the season goes on. So I will give it that. But still, I don't go to Goosebumps for love triangles. I don't go to them for crushes and romance. That's not what I go to Goosebumps for. So it pains me, as much as they toned it down, that they're still there. They should have done away with them, not just tone them down. So
to me, they don't add to the story whatsoever.
No, not at all.
Like their relationship stuff that they threw in doesn't tie in to any of that. The only relationship stuff that mattered was thankfully the focal point. But when you throw that in, I feel that's more of a distraction. It's like, who cares? Like, why?
Well, there's also an out of nowhere romance between Cece and Alex. That just kind of happened.
Yeah, that
like
was
I
weird.
wasn't thinking that was even where they're going.
I feel like that's like I feel like that was another forced Disney. Let's throw in a lesbian gay couple thing.
Yeah, but they have to because they have like a sheet like they gotta pull now. Like you gotta have.
I don't even care that it's like a lesbian thing. It's more just like, where did this come from? Because like,
no, I don't either. What I'm saying is they threw it in for no reason. It came out of nowhere. It wasn't like they were talking over the summer or the this year or whatever. And, hey, I'm in town. No build up, no nothing. It was just straight. Hey.
Yeah, it was like
by the way,
at first, and then all of a sudden they're
like, where'd this come from?
They're like kind of out at first, and then they're like I feel like they're gonna become like friends, and then nope, they're just full on making out, and it's like, what the hell?
It was like random. It made no sense. I'm like, okay, are we supposed to be invested into this relationship for some reason? No, because nothing pays off from that either. Because even by the end of the series, it was more, again, just like a, can't wait to see you again. I'm going back home to my mom's, but I'll keep in touch. How are you with long distance? It's like, okay, what is happening? I was like, why is this here? I was like, again, I don't remember writing anything like this in Goosebumps back in the day.
Be any love stuff in Goosebumps, realistically. Usually you just got the two parents that are clearly married, have kids, and that's it. You don't
unless it's Slappy and Mary Ellen, I don't care.
Yeah,
that's the only love. That's the only love thing in Goosebumps is Mary Ellen and Slappy. And I mean, Slappy does use the term love tapping.
Time in the original Goosebumps that I can think about anything involving like a love plot or anything with How I Learned to Fly, and even then, it was just the main character just had a crush on a girl. At the most, it's like maybe a character will
You
like
read How I Learned
another
to
one
Fly?
is cute. Like I don't know. I just like there was never anything like this where there's like full on focus on, oh, this character's in love with this character, but they're also in love with this character. So it's like I
Don't need it. Season
I-
three.
You get your love triangle, and then you get your forced. And I say forced because again, I don't care if it's lesbian, gay. I don't care about any of that. But the fact is that like it's not Goosebumps. Like the relationship shit is not Goosebumps. It makes no sense to keep throwing it in,
Yeah.
especially when it has nothing to do with the plot device that is the story.
Personally,
So like it's
You
just
know-
a side distraction, I guess. But
yeah.
for what?
No, I think it's dumb. Personally, season three, I hope that the characters are actually the age, like in Goosebumps, how old are kids meant to be? 12?
yeah, about
The
like,
TV series,
between
8 to
11, 12. Like they're
Yeah.
clearly pre.
You always have the older
these are,
sibling and the younger
full-on
sibling.
high schoolers.
So you still have the older people, but they always got maybe like 14, 15-year-olds to play the 12-year-olds, like roughly was what they would do in the original 90s show. So I was like, you know what? Or like maybe 13, maybe, but they kind of looked a little bit older than 12, but they don't look like full-on 20-year-olds. So I think that's one thing they still need to fix with if they do a season three, if they go there, is I think the kids need to be aged down, and then we probably won't get that love stuff because they're not teenagers. So it's like give us younger kids, like the age demographic for Goosebumps, and maybe then they can be rid of that. We don't need it. I think they feel like they have to put it in because they are teenagers. I don't know.
I think it's just part of a
I
larger
don't know
problem, and I want to talk more about this later. It's not a spoiler or anything, but I just want to talk about it like at the end. But I think that's just part of a larger problem with young adult sort of show making at this point. We're in a very different era from when the original series came out, and I feel like with the success of certain things like Stranger Things, I've heard a lot of people talking about in comparison to this show.
Riverdale.
Riverdale. There's
yeah.
certain things that certain companies like to go after because they're popular, and I feel like that's being affected in this show in particular. Not in particular this show only.
Well, that goes what Bjorn said earlier with the formula, like they have to apparently go by.
Well, like
in
the
terms
Are You
of
Afraid of
what
the
they
Dark
should
reboot
or
did
have
this a
to
lot, too.
include.
Personally, I think the Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot is better than the Goosebumps reboot. But even that show was, still going into
Well,
a
the first
modern
first
sort
couple,
of
the third
style.
one was pretty rough.
Yeah, the third one was
But
rough.
the first
but
two,
the first two were pretty
good.
Pretty good.
Give me
Yeah.
give me a Squid Game version of Goosebumps. Give me like a freaking Slappy is like the showrunner of like the whole games, and it's like, yeah, give me like a Squid Game Goosebumps where it's just like full on gory, gross. That'd be interesting. But
Before we jump into these spoilers, yeah, just going over everything. Obviously we have our problems. There's many things from season one that are still present here in season
Carry
two. We
on.
hope are eradicated in season three. Assuming that there is one made. But there were still many things that we liked, and this was a very definite improvement over season one. Much more enjoyable.
Yeah,
to
for
watch.
sure.
And
Even my daughter, like I told her, I was like, hey, this is actually a watchable season. So if you want to watch it, because she didn't much care for the first one either, which says a lot because while she likes Goosebumps, she's not like an avid fan. Sad, I know. I should have her killed, but I won't. But it's okay. She didn't much care for the first season either. But I told her, I was like, I would even rewatch this season with you. I will never watch the first season again unless I'm like being tortured, and this is what they torture me with.
I would rewatch
First
episode
season?
4 of season
Like-
1, maybe.
I would tell them I'd rather be like electrocuted or waterboarded before I watch season one again. But season two, I was like, okay, I'll watch it, and I'll watch it with you. I was like, I'm actually willing to sit through this again because, I mean, it was good. It was a coherent story with good acting. Again, I think David Schwimmer stole the show, which isn't a surprise because he's a seasoned actor, much like Justin Long and what's her name? I'm forgetting her
Rachel
name from
Harris.
season 1. Rachel Harris.
She was good, and she was one of the best
Like
actors.
she was great. I just didn't care for her story arc with the whole adultery crap. But what she had with her son, that was cool. And I know we've talked about that. That was actually like legit good acting and
It was
good
a good
scenes.
acting, and it was a good arc.
So-
That's why that episode is so good. Like not only the adaptation, but just in general, is because it had legitimate stakes and it had a legitimate arc between Lucas and his mom, and that's what I wanted more of.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I feel like that's one slip up that season 1 did better in terms of the parents and kids compared to this one. Like, as much as I like all the characters from this season 2, there wasn't as built of a close connection, in my opinion, anyway, to Brewer and his kids. Like because I think they were trying to have their own story arcs throughout. Their interactions were brief. They were somewhat parenty lovey, but I mean, like it wasn't really built like what season 1's Will. I think it was Will, right? Will. And,
it was Lucas and his mom.
Lucas.
Nora.
Yeah,
Lucas and Nora.
So
Lucas and Nora, like that relationship, I thought was built very well. They had really good chemistry, so you really cared what happened to them in that first season. And you still care, don't get me wrong, about season 2 and their characters, but for different reasons. It's not nearly as well
because
written.
they're deliberately story-wise having the kids and the parent characters. And to be fair, there's only 2 parent characters that we really follow this season, and it's David Schwimmer's character and the cop played by Anna Ortiz. Those are the 2 that we've really followed. And the other parent characters are like side characters or appearing.
Which is weird. Like they never really said what happened to Brewer's wife, did they?
I think they
they split up, right?
Oh
they
lives somewhere else? Yeah, they split up, and she lives.
You really just kind of got the indication that's all that happened, but no, for
they kind of allude that I think Tori's her name, and that Tori's kind of like pushing a lot of expectations, especially on Cece. That sort of thing. So like you don't know the whole dynamic between the 2, but you can definitely tell that her and Anthony have a lot of tension between them, and that's very much why they split up. On top of that, Dr. Brewer's got a lot of other problems in his life that are kind of adding to it. I guess it's a good time to probably hop into some spoilers. So as I said, if you have not watched Goosebumps The Vanishing yet, click off this video now because we're going to go into details about certain plot aspects in every episode, and especially the ending of the season. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch the season now.
Too late, nerds. Harry dies at the end.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Harry Berry. But check out season.
That was the running joke with Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah, he dies at the end.
Before book 7 and the movie came out. Harry dies.
But
he technically does.
Yeah,
briefly.
That's true. But back then, that was a big thing because everybody was flipping the F out. Like,
so,
dude,
it's almost like J.K. Rowling was like, let's actually kill Harry, but then he's resurrected. Like, we will kill him, but then we'll resurrect him. So it was like, so technically, he didn't lie about Harry dying. It was technically true. It's like in Pokemon, how many times did Ash die? Like 3, 4 throughout the whole show and movies.
I don't know, too many.
He never actually dies. Chucky never dies.
No matter who dies, this is your warning to click off the video now. Go watch Goosebumps The Vanishing and, come up with your own opinion. We liked it. We enjoyed it. It's a definite step in the right direction. So there's your spoiler-free review. Last chance. Here we go. We're getting into spoilers.
What? To those giving me shit when I did my season 1, you can't be a Goosebumps fan if you haven't already seen season 2. If you're a Goosebumps fan, you would have seen it already, man.
So I guess to start off, spoilers. I do want to say that this season does start out pretty slow. I thought Stay Out of the Basement Part 1. Now, to be fair, I think starting with a 2-parter is better than what they did in season 1, because season 1 had to start with Say Cheese and Die.
Agreed.
And in the first episode of a series, you have to set up all the characters. So, and season 1 had a lot of characters. So you had to set up all of these characters, plus the main plot of the show, plus the location they're all in, and on top of that, you had to adapt Say Cheese and Die. So it just seemed like they crammed a lot, and it didn't leave much room for the adaptation side of things. So starting with a two-parter episode, in this case, not Sage and Day, Stay Out of the Basement, you use part one to set things up, and then part two is when you start getting into the more interesting aspects. And a lot of people I talked to said the same things. Stay Out of the Basement part one is boring. It's not a great episode. It's fine, but it's a way to get yourself into part two, which is way more enjoyable. I've actually seen many people say that Stay Out of the Basement part two is the best episode. Because it goes into
my favorite.
It is a good one. It's in my, I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite, but I'd probably say it's maybe my second favorite. Maybe I'd say second favorite. I'd say it's my silver medal for the season. I will say I love the opening scene of part two, because that's when the part in the trailer where Anthony's picking the worms out of his arm, I can assure you, is way grosser in the show, because he ends up having to
I don't know if they ended up being worms. I think it was I think they're vines.
Like roots. It's like roots.
Yeah, I was saying, because when he cut out that bulb, which surprised me they showed, even for Goosebumps, I know they do like the broken bone in season one and all this other stuff, a bit more gory, but a lot of body horror this season, which I've very much enjoyed. I think they did a very good job with that. But him actually cutting his arm, getting that giant bulb out, and then ripping what I assume, I got to be roots. I don't think they were worms, but like, I do believe, they were like roots, like in his skin, just ripping them out. I'm like, oh shit! Like, okay, here we go.
Oh, and no, seriously, and he bled green. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it was green blood that he was letting out. So it's like
it was black.
Green blood he was blooding out.
It was a much darker green, but it was definitely green from what I told. But
no one makes me bleed my own blood.
Him grabbing that scalpel and just going in, like just going for it. And he actually pulls that thing out. I personally have trypophobia, so I always worry about like just like little things inside of like your skin. That was
you've got worms inside.
We all do.
I think everyone's got like we've all got parasites and worms and shit.
Make me think about
areas. We do, like we actually do, and
all stuff lives on our skin and all that stuff. Yeah,
and there's people that want to like lick. They're getting that shit.
Every time you
lick
your fingers clean of some wings and stuff. Getting a little more than just that wing sauce, brother.
Oh God. Anyway, actually going back quickly to the first episode, I thought the cold open was really good. I thought just the whole scene of like the kids in 1994 going down into the tunnel and finding that hatch is a good way to build that initial piece of mystery. And while one thing that I will go into a lot in this review is there are some things that are really cool concepts, but I feel they needed much more time to explain how it works. Particularly the the black goo that is ever so present this season. And like, I know it's like what it comes from, but I don't know like what exactly its goal is or like how many things it can do. So, for instance, at the start of this show, right before the opening intro, Maddie gets like all those spores in him and he does like the black like bleeding eyes, and then his whole fucking face disintegrates, like just melts into a black skull, and it was awesome. But so did he die? Like I don't really understand like
the body.
And why did it do that to him but not to Devin?
And I'm like there's other people
or
who get that
Trey or You know, I don't know. It was really weird. Like it seemed to affect everybody differently,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that was their goal.
It wasn't really
Because
explained.
it affected Brewer different, and it wasn't really explained. It's just an alien parasite.
Yeah.
Is really all you can get from that, I suppose.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the whole thing. So I guess we'll get it out of the way. So basically, this whole thing is tied in with an alien ship that crash landed on Earth back in the 60s, and it's being held at this government facility that they call Camp Nightmare.
By some crazy bitch.
Yeah. And so basically, this ship was
terrible at her job.
Well, this whole ship was the product of an experiment back in 1960 something, and there was a group of scientists led by one scientist,
Woodstock,
his daughter, and then just a group of other scientists, and they were essentially trying to figure out what this living ship. It's a ship that is basically a creature, and what it
They could
wanted.
have made that like they could have made that like the body squeezers or something. Like they could have even tied that in if they wanted to.
Well,
They actually titled that last episode "Invasion of the Body Squeezers."
They did. So
Did
actually,
they?
one thing I'll bring up really quick.
I didn't even read the
They
titles.
released-
Like I was just watching it.
Well, they just finally released that title today. I think.
Yes.
Today or yesterday.
Oh,
So
see, I
okay,
didn't know. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? I like.
Before we actually get into more of the episode details, I do want to bring this up. Before the season dropped, they released a reel that was like a title reveal. They did this for season 1 too, where they basically revealed all the titles for each
And
episode.
they fucked us over with it.
And yes. And this season
Yes.
they did the first 6 and then they blurred the last 2. And I'm literally going to die on this hill. Episode 7 was supposed to be called Egg Monsters from Mars. It ended up being Welcome to Camp Nightmare, but you
That's fine. That's fine.
gaslight me. And to be fair, episode 7 is more akin to Camp Nightmare than it is to Egg Monsters. So if it were called Egg Monsters, I probably would have felt ripped off. Regardless, don't tease me like that because I was excited. But episode 8 was supposed to be titled Invasion of the Body Squeezers. For the last few days, or the first few days that the season was up, it was just called episode 8. Like it wasn't even titled
F8. I think it was EP8, wasn't it? Just F8.
something like that. So basically just an untitled episode until today. I don't know if it was a mistake or they were intentionally trying to like keep it a secret to save the twist, but
That's cool though, because like at least we now know like that is what's tied in. Because I thought that's what it was, I just didn't know because that wasn't the title. And now that you're telling me that is the title, as of today, I'm like, okay, that makes sense now. They did tie in the government facility thing from Camp Nightmare, and with body squeezers as like so it makes sense now, and it actually kind of makes it better in a way. Maybe my 5.75 just went to a 6.25.
Ooh, here now, folks. Bjorn's changed his score on air.
It changed my score because it kind of like knowing that now just kind of makes it that fraction of a hair better. Like knowing that.
And I will get more into it is like, because I feel that finale is certainly a better finale than season 1, but it's still
hell yeah.
It still is very flawed, and I feel like there are many questions left unanswered. And the reason I brought all that up to begin with is that the goo and just the overall alien being just has a lot of unanswered questions on what it can do, what its properties are. So going back to the cold open of episode 1, it's like, Maddie's face fucking melts, and it's a cool scene, but it's like, okay, so are the teens all dead? Are they turning into goo and that's how they get in the pods? Like it's weird. It's too open-ended is my point. But it makes for a cool scene, I guess.
It was weird. And like, why keep them in the pods for that long? Like at first I thought they were being put in the pods because they were going to be like their life was going to be drained and it was going to feed the ship or something. But they don't explain why they're potted. Other than just the fact that they get turned into these like alien dog monsters later. I mean,
it's probably
that was really
the most
it. And then all of a sudden they're back to human again, and then they're like, "Hey, we're leaving with them." They said it's cool, so peace, homie.
Yeah, they just leave with them at the end. It's like, wait a minute,
it's so weird
because you're almost like,
it was so odd.
Like they're just moving on now. They're just ghosts, right? But then they're like, they're having us leave with them, and it's like, wait, what? What?
Why? They didn't talk to you for like 30 years. You guys were annoying as shit, so they potted you up, and so they wouldn't talk to you. You had the stupid expression on your face for 30 years.
First of all,
they all ended up like that. Why were they all on the pod like that?
Well, it's also like,
dude, come on. So it was really odd. That was such a weird ending.
There's a scene from Welcome from Camp Nightmare where
they could have used jack-o'-lanterns. Could have been that the jack-o'-lanterns actually were like going to eat them. I don't know.
Well, yeah,
see, I would have been okay with that. That would have been cool.
No, because
they could have done that. Like they come down with their funny little puppet hand heads, and then
they're Muppet.
We were just smoking them for 30 years. So we were putting them in like a smoker,
smoking them.
It was a smoking pod, like like when you smoke meat.
The smoke.
They were just riping them like to be really nice and tasty, and they were just gonna eat them.
No, and there's a scene from Camp Nightmare where apparently because basically the first thing that gets potted is a counselor from Camp Night Moon. Okay,
thank you for doing that.
Camp Night Moon. Thank you, God. Thank you. You know, at least
they referenced that.
They did more homework. There are just little references that they sprinkle in here and there. Camp Nightmare. They named the actual camp Camp Night Moon, and the cold open of episode 7 is a counselor taking a bunch of kids over to a cliff, and that's when the ship crashes and it pulls the counselor in, and he's the first one to get potted,
which made no sense either, because they said that the ship was acting like this because it was feeling threatened and trapped, but that counselor didn't do a damn thing. All he did was look over the edge. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
done. He's gone. He's gone.
Yeah,
he didn't even do anything.
And then the reveal later that it's like, oh, the ship just wants to be let free, and then it's like it's friendly. It's like, friendly my ass. Like it trapped all these people.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
made me think my brother was dead for 30 years.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
And by the way, like, I know they titled the episode not The Ghost Next Door, it was The Girl Next Door, which was really weird because that it's like a movie title from back in the day. It was a good movie, but like it was based on, like, it had the whole plot point was a porn star moved next door to this kid. So, just saying.
Two different things.
Probably not the best title to change this from The Ghost Next Door to The Girl Next Door. But they also changed it to The Boy Who Cried Monster, which I understand because it was the whole concept of, I think it was Devin.
CJ.
Right. Or was it Trey?
Was the one.
Or was it CJ? Oh, no, it was CJ. Yeah.
Who, by the
saying
way,
that Brewer was a
best character. Like, besides Dr. Brewer, CJ is best character. Like, that dude was awesome from the first moment he appeared.
So they changed the titles to fit their story, which, okay. I mean, I kind of can.
At least it wasn't a clickbait.
Because at least it wasn't a clickbait. So I can let that go.
There were no
clickbait
I will say,
titles. How is it that, I thought this girl was dead? And she appeared to Devin, and he was the only one who could see her. But why? Nobody else could do that. Why didn't Maddie show up and be like, "Oh, what's up, Stink? Yeah, I'm trapped down here, bro. Why don't you come help me out?"
Yeah.
I'm stuck in this pod with a stupid expression on my face for the last 30 years. So when I come out of this, it's really going to hurt my cheeks. So come let me out. No?
Well, I think, like, from this season, though, is like, obviously this season was better than season 2, right? So if we do get a season 3, are we going to improve again? Like, is it going to be even better?
I certainly hope so. Like, this season is a definite step in the right direction, and I hope that these creators are listening to criticism, because I feel like they did.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little less of the love stuff. Like, a little less of that. The titles weren't clickbait. They're actually giving us a little more references here, and like, I think they did listen a bit more this time around. And they gave a little bit of the goof with the spooky. So
I shit you not, and I don't remember what episode, but there was literally a few times where they use the motif from the opening of the '90s intro, like a synth version. I think it was in Camp Nightmare, but it's like the a few times, and I'm like, I heard that.
I have to go back and
Must
find
have missed
that.
that.
Yeah, I heard it.
I didn't catch that.
There was that scene in the library where there's like all the books. Did you guys notice any references in the background of that one? Because obviously, remember in season 1 when they're in the library, there was like literally Goosebump books like on the shelf. There was even like the Goosebump movie novel because obviously Rob Letterman did the movie, and like as a reference, like I want to go back to that library scene in this season and see if we can spot any Goosebump books hiding in the background. And I feel like hopefully
I don't know.
You know, because I like those sorts of things. I like those little nods, like the little hidden things in the background. And they did that a lot in season 1. So there probably is in this season, but we just, because we haven't rewatched or done a deep dive, we haven't seen it. But yeah.
I was gonna say I only watched it once through, and I wasn't looking for those, but I should have been. I guess I was more focused on, I guess, the foreground and what they were doing in those moments, because a lot of stuff typically was happening in the foreground. I wasn't really looking in the background.
You could have had a kid reading a Goosebump book like in the background, like literally. That would have been cool. And I would have picked like Stay Out of the Basement or something with the OG cover. That would have been a really cool little. I like when they do things like that in Goosebumps, because they did that even in the original '90s show. Like most kids' bedrooms had Goosebump books on the shelf, like in the background.
Or when they're on TV, it was like a amalgamation of other episodes mixed together, oddly enough.
Yeah, or the skateboard that
Werewolf Fever Swamp. Yeah, exactly.
We know if that exists, if that's a real skateboard or not. If that's a real skateboard,
I've never seen it anywhere, but hey, it doesn't mean it's not.
That's rarer than the sneak preview little freaking Tales to Give You book. I'll tell you that. If that is a real thing, that's rarer. I'll pay $1,000 for that.
I want to go back to Stay Out of the Basement really quick. So we mentioned the cold open and that sort of thing. So episode 1's just kind of setting everything up. Again, though, once you get to episode 2, things start really like veering hard. So, of course, Dr. Brewer pulls that bulb-like thing out of his arm, and he immediately starts testing. And also, I forgot to mention the spores that he gets hit with also take over some of the plants. So that's the whole thing where they're like wrapping around his arms and like pulling him around and all that stuff. So basically, it's like the spores take over everything. And then what ends up happening is he starts testing on the bulb, and it like blossoms open into like a flower. And he uses a mouse to like
carnivorous.
Yeah, he finds out it's carnivorous, and he's like freaking out. He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna be right back." And he goes and gets mice, like dead mice, and the thing just it devours it, and it just makes these disgusting sounds, like just like it's really, really.
Which also baffles me, the Trey situation, because as Trey goes into the basement and starts jacking it up after Brewer like awesomely smashed his car window.
Yeah, that scene was awesome. I love that.
that whole scene was satisfying, because at that point I really hated Trey. So the actor did a good job. But when he's starting to trash the basement, and all of a sudden the carnivorous bulb that is not a plant, you find out it's an animal, is in the freezer where Brewer put it, but he opens it up and it like pulls Trey in. I'm like, yes, he's dead. But supposedly not. And I can't figure out why. And then he turns into a giant mud monster.
Mm-hmm. That was the closest thing to a mud monster we had.
It
really was
an awesome design, though. Like, I love that monster so much. It was cool. They should have done more. That was the moment where I'm like, okay, this is definitely better than season 1. Like that, when that thing appeared, I was like, this is way better than season 1.
It had a really good.
My review was 6.25,
but hey.
That's the thing.
It was cool, but it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why is he not dead?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, because I thought it was like the more horrifying thing is that is him. Like I was almost thinking like his fucking skin got like melted off, and he's just like this goo
Yeah.
being. And I was like, that is really scary. Like look, Trey's character at first is a horribly,
Which is what I thought happened to
asshole
Maddie, and I thought that was what Maddie would be like when we found him later.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have made sense, at least, I guess. Just having the same kind of monster, the goop turns him into this monster.
There is
Yeah, but I
there is
mean,
one
it
shot
didn't
where
really
he's
go
like-
anywhere other than the haunted car episode, which was actually pretty good.
Mhm.
Oh, they used System of a Down music, dude.
Yeah,
They did too.
nice.
I will say, I was not fond of the music choices when this show started.
A lot of them were
I
very.
thought, oh god, they're trying to go to like new age hip hoppy and
Gen Z music.
whatever
Well, there's
rap
one
and stuff.
review
I'm
I
like, that's not my
saw-
jam, but it doesn't vibe with Goosebumps very well, despite
there
the
was
fact
one
this wasn't
review
in
that
New
was
York.
like, there's lots of
But-
Doja Cat and 21 Savage and Sabrina Carpenter, and I'm like, But then fucking
Yeah, there is.
Chop Suey by System of a Down starts playing.
But then you get System of a Down, yeah. Apparently
And
that
I
was
was
Trey's
like-
favorite. So then, so I started liking Trey more after that because his music choice was better.
Yeah.
So
Again, I want to go back to that because, again, just the weird properties of this alien substance. Because it's like, yeah, you think that's Trey, like he's dead, or he just like emerged as this ghoul. And I was kind of vibing with that. I'm like, wow, this series is not above like killing these characters in gruesome ways, mind
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And then like it goes the typical like sort of
he's
monster
alive.
route where he like carries Frankie out of the house and like he knocks Devin out. And there's one scene where he's like trying to get her to scrape all the stuff off.
yeah, it's more of that body horror. It's just like goop that she's scraping off, but it kind of looked like almost looked like muscle underneath a little bit, but
Mhm.
I don't know how to describe it. It was weird. But yeah.
I mean, I guess that was like
I honestly thought like the moment like he came out of the house with Frankie, like I thought that Devin, because Devin was already infected at this point, and so I thought like that was the moment like something would emerge from Devin
Mhm.
and either like start attacking him, or they would just like team up, kind of a deal at that point, because they're both under the control of the goo,
Oh yeah,
or whatever you want to call it.
forgot about that. There is a scene where the plants drag Devin into the sewer and they implant one of those bulbs into his mouth.
Yeah. Well,
So-
and then also, I mean, the fact that he was the first one to be infected after Maddie anyway, because they went to Camp Nightmare and went down in there, and he got infected right then and there. Remember, because he came out like all his head was all ooh, and he was bleeding
Yeah.
from his eyes, the goop and stuff. So he was
Yeah.
infected way before that. Like he was the first one of those kids to be infected, and then but Trey got the worst. And I guess because of that bulb plant that was in there that didn't eat him, and maybe it just bonded with him. I really don't know what the hell happened in that freezer.
Who
But-
knows? But yeah,
Happened in
no.
the damn freezer.
And then and then Devin
Happened in the freezer.
and then Devin comes to try and save Frankie, and he just the Trey creature like just starts trying to attack him, and then they crush him with a fucking car, and it's just like splat.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere. I didn't expect her to do that.
Yeah, that was like I hate to admit it, like I had a huge smile on my face. I'm like, this is kind of fucking awesome.
I didn't know the haunted car could swim.
Well, and also, yeah, so basically what leads into the haunted car. And again, I like that this season does this because everything leads into another. So crushing the Trey creature with the car, the goop goes into the car, and then that becomes the focus of the next episode. So it's like everything leads.
He is now
It's
possessed
goop.
his
It's
car.
just a lot of goop. I mean, like the kombucha turned into a freaking.
Well, I want to get to
monster
Monster Blood after the haunted car because I have some things to say about the Monster Blood. But the haunted car episode, there's a few people who put it on the bottom of their ranking. It is an episode that deals with another character, in this case Alex, and a little bit with Cece, who's Devin's sister. And this is one of those ones
Which
that
I really don't understand that either, I guess, real quick as a side note. Why they didn't just keep, Casey and Margaret.
Yeah,
Why they change the character names? I just don't
Oh
understand
yeah, they could have.
the reasoning behind that.
they could have done it. I mean, honestly, like
It made no sense why they changed the name.
They could have that Aunt Eleanor and everything.
Oh, but
Yeah,
you know
man.
what? The
And
whole
Eleanor
thing
could have been
there's-
the one guarding Camp Night Moon.
No, but you
Yeah.
know what? The whole thing is that the kids are staying with Anthony because their aunt is having surgery. Like, did you guys catch that?
Oh my god, that was a reference.
Yes, it
that was
is.
a reference.
So
Yeah.
it's like, again, little things. Like, I don't
digging
know,
deep
like,
here, guys. We're digging deep.
little things. And then also, one thing we forgot to mention is that Anthony is dealing with his mother having dementia. So it's another thing that's adding to his stress. And
They
he's
really
like,
did read the book this time.
my career as a botanist on hold so I could take care of my mother. And she's basically, there is a funny thing. One of the creepiest jump scares in the whole, one that actually got me was when they're visiting, Dr. Brewer's mom in the senior home, and like her and Devin are just sitting on the couch, and she's like, "Hi, how you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm doing fine." And then she just is like, "Are you Maddie? You smell like him. You smell like Maddie. Like, do you know where he is? Like, you just smell like him." And like that actually, like,
You costume.
so that's another whole aspect, is that basically Maddie's disappearance kind of really, really affected both Dr. Brewer and the grandma character. So, but going back to the haunted car, so basically the sludge goes into the car and takes it over. And I mean, you would think that it's haunted by Trey and it's the haunted car. So Alex basically is someone who just got out of juvie. She was framed for an arson that set a whole building on fire. And she's very resentful of her mom, who's one of the main adult characters, played by Anna Ortiz. And she's a cop, so she basically has resentment. And she ends up stealing Trey's car so she could, because she has an ankle bracelet on. There's a bunch of, I don't want to go all day on this stuff, but
my least favorite character when she pulled out that phone and was like, "This person is not letting me have get what I want." I was like, "No, she's one of them people. You're my least favorite character."
But
sorry.
it kind of saved it, because then the shop owner does the same thing and is like, "Now I'm live streaming," and then she's like, "Whoa, okay."
You know what?
I hated that shop character too, though.
I'm sorry, if someone did that to me, like just pulled out a phone and started filming, I would knock it out of their hand, man. I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't think. I wouldn't care how much. I would just.
I'd start posing and
hope it breaks.
Yeah,
I'll start posing, and then I would start my only food live stream.
Moving on. So Alex is a character, has a lot of setup in haunted cars. So I feel like that's maybe why many people aren't gravitating towards it, because it kind of is one of two episodes that gravitates away from the main plot. But basically, she's got out of juvie. She has an ankle bracelet on. She has a lot of resentment for her mom. So she ends up stealing Trey's car, which is possessed by the goop, the alien goop. And it leads into the whole thing where the car is controlling itself and she can't stop it. And all while playing System of a Down, which was awesome. Just like playing System of a Down while the car is like veering out of control.
From a portable CD player that's hooked in through the cassette deck, I think, if I remember right. So that was a really nice throwback to the 90s too, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I had to do it back in the day. You had a cassette player, wanted to play your CDs. You had to have the adapter, bro.
Oh yeah, I remember that. And no,
you remember that? You're like 21 or 22.
I remember. I'm 30 this year.
I'm not a CD player, but
I
had a family member who had a car where you had to use they wanted to connect their phone, but it's the same thing. They had a cassette player, so you had a cassette to USB, and that's how they played off their phone. So, that's what I know personally. But the whole haunted car thing, won't dwell on it too much, because it's basically what you expect. The car controls itself. It's putting the riders in danger. There is a really cool scene where it crashes because the car's basically trying to run over the person that framed Alex. They're like chasing him on a bike, and it's like getting closer and closer. and then it veers and crashes into a pole, and then it fixes itself. It just like the bent metal just like goes right back into place and it turns back on. Like, I don't know. I thought that was really cool. It was better than how it was in the movie, the Goosebumps movie, in my opinion. So, because it was basically
That was just Slappy's pimp ride in the movie. So
It looked cool in the movie, though. The car looked cool.
I mean, it looked cool, but it didn't do anything like that interesting. It just drove around with Slappy in it.
Yeah, but he wasn't controlling it. His feet didn't reach the brakes.
yeah, I was about to say his feet didn't reach the brake.
Can't stop, but I can't reach the brakes.
It literally was just Slappy's ride to get around. Like, it took him around so he could get places where he needed to go. But then again, he could freaking teleport anyway. So, didn't need the haunted car, man.
But
He just needed to look cool
he was just
for,
cruising in
Mary
style.
Ellen. He just thought Mary Ellen might have come out. I better look cool for her. Better drive.
You notice that he didn't release her from the books.
Oh, no, he wouldn't.
I didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
He told
Oh,
Like,
my
I'm not
us as much.
stupid.
Yeah. Slappy told us though he'd like to do another project with her, so
Maybe he'll let her out eventually. Then I don't know.
who knows. But
Haunted Cars was okay.
yeah,
Not
okay.
I mean, it wasn't a terrible episode, but it was not one of the great ones either.
He's one of the weaker
I mean,
ones.
it was neat. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the fact that like when it went into the river, like kind of like Bjorn was saying, it was like apparently it learned how to swim, and then it just just completely disintegrated itself or broke its molecular structure down to be whatever, then connected to whatever else, the plants or whatever that was on the island. So it's like, okay, no idea what's happening here. But
That
sure,
is the
we'll roll
unfortunate
with it.
thing. It's like as much as like the marketing hindered on sort of the botany and the plant stuff, it's really only in Stay Out of the Basement. The focus is mostly on the goo. Like it's very much goo and spores.
Goose-centric
So,
season.
but
The last of
But
us.
Goosebumps the Goop.
Cordyceps.
They should have called it Goosebumps the Goop, not the Vanishing.
goop bumps.
Goosebumps season. Goosebumps.
But yeah,
season.
Haunted Car is an okay
Yeah.
episode. It's
Yeah.
it's a
It's all
vignette
right.
sort of episode. It does
Even
play-
Monster Blood was only okay. I'd probably rank those two probably on the lower end of the episodes.
That's how I feel too. They're
Eight.
not bad episodes. They're okay. Monster Blood, I would say I put below Haunted Car though, because so basically how that ends up coming about is that the car basically spurts a little bit of the spores on Cece's kombucha cup. And from what I've been told, the Monster Blood in this show is basically living kombucha.
It is.
That just makes it all the more reason why I want to drink
At least
kombucha,
if
I
it was
guess.
green.
Yeah.
At least if it was green, I think would have been all right.
Honestly,
Like,
they had
Who doesn't
no
wash their
reason to
cup,
not make
though?
it green.
Who doesn't wash their cup? This girl gets her cup back from this, what she thinks is a crazy person, crazy driver who she apparently had no love interest with, but then all of a sudden does later, whatever. But she's like, oh, by the way, here's your cup. She could have spit in that thing. She could have done a lot of that stuff. And she doesn't even care. She's just like, fill it up, baby.
more than spit in
Some
there.
more
She
that
could have
kombucha.
kicked her nose, flicked the booger in
I
there.
do like the
That-
line
Yeah.
that Cece
If
says
you
though,
would
where
have
she
cleaned your
like.
cup, maybe this wouldn't have happened to you.
I do like the line
Yeah.
though that Cece has where Alex comes up to her and she's like, "Oh, are you here to finish the job?" I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny." But no,
The best
so yeah.
scene was in the honestly the best scene was the subway for me. Like
No,
in that whole episode.
So here's the thing. The reason why
Yeah, that
I
was
say
good.
Monster Blood is on my lower end is because it's kind of a slog. It deals a lot with Cece's character in particular. It kind of shows that because she's talking a lot about debate camp at first in the first 3 episodes, but it turns out that she's not actually in debate camp. She's just lying because she's surrounded by people who are girl bosses. Sort of people who are like, oh, look at how much cool stuff I do, like, slay queen, like that, that stuff that I don't get into personally. But it sort of sets up expectations for herself that she dogs on herself a lot for. So it's you can see where it's coming from. But basically, she drinks the cursed alien kombucha, and then she goes to an interview that she ends up like having a nosebleed. And actually, I thought it was going to be sentient blood.
Burping.
Like
She's
maybe it was,
burping. Man, she was-
yeah. Basically, what ends up happening is because I thought it was going to be like sentient blood. Like I really thought that's what it was going for, or at least it was going to be like infected with her blood or something like that. But yeah, basically she ends up botching the interview because she's like having the effects, and she goes home and she just upchucks the kombucha, and then it ends up coming to life as this giant blob. And that's when the episode gets good. That's the whole chase sequence with the monster blood itself is very good. It's a really tense sort of chase scene, and when it gets to the subway, I feel like it's a really good climax. It just kind of wish that there was a little more of that. There was a lot of build up and very
It
little.
had the right texture of monster blood, like what we saw kind of from the 90s show, that weird, like, shiny, just the wrong color.
Yeah,
It had the right look, just the wrong color.
Yeah, they made it more like an amber color,
yeah.
which was
You got
weird.
it half right.
It almost looked like mashed.
Even the puke she puked up wasn't amber. It was that black goo that we've been seeing like this whole time. So when it turned into like this amber color, I was really confused. I mean,
Maybe they mixed that
At
with
least
the
it could've been
kombucha
green.
color, and that was the color you got.
yeah, I guess maybe that's what it was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have to go back and look and see if that's what the kombucha color was. It probably was,
Yeah,
but
That
Could've
mixed
been green
with
still.
black makes the
Still-
red amber color.
just the whole fact that it's kombucha is kind of just a weird.
It's all Gen Z stuff, man.
It is
it's
Gen
like
Z stuff. It really, really is, and I hate that.
right down to the kombucha. Like,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like a whole thing is like, why is there so much focus on kombucha? Like, I've never even had kombucha. Like, is this a thing that Gen Z likes now? Like,
well, she gives it to that. Oh well,
I mean,
was
I've
gonna-
had it.
He
It's not
gives it
good.
to he gives some to what's her name again? Hannah. Later
Oh,
on,
yeah,
and
Hannah,
she
yeah.
hated it, and she was like, "Ew, this is weird." And I'm like, "Yeah, it is kind of gross kombucha. Like, it's just healthy, but
No,
it's
Alec.
an acquired taste, and there is a lot of flavors. So I guess if you find the flavor that you can get used to, like, then you'll enjoy
see, I
it."
will say that is one thing I will give them credit for on two is that they at least kept Hannah's name
And she
from
was a
Ghost
ghost.
Next Door.
for
Yep.
the Ghost Next Door.
hmm
Why couldn't they just do that for other characters? I don't know, but
I don't know.
they kept it for Hannah.
Yeah.
So
The second time we got Hannah
whatever.
in a Rob Letterman produced Goosebumps product. So
That's true. Yeah,
We've had Hannah in
Yeah,
every
but she
Goosebumps
was the Ghost
adaptation.
Next Door in the movie too. So
yeah.
I mean, that kind of makes sense. So I
We've
was
had
okay
Hannah
with
in the
that,
movies,
but-
Hannah in the 90s show. We've had Hannah in the new series. Like, we've had her in pretty much all the media now, like from the past to now.
Yeah. But yeah, so Monster
Movie
Blood I
Hannah's
thought
still
had a
my
really
favorite.
good climax.
Movie
I
Hannah?
feel like you'll get into Monster Blood through primarily the last 15 minutes. But
Hot. Want
Everything-
the hiney?
everything before then is kind of a slog. And same thing with Haunted Car. Like everything that's not revolved around the Haunted Car is probably going to be boring for you. But trust me, when it gets to those parts, they're enjoyable in their own right. I feel like this season pulled off those moments better than season one did. And season one, I feel like when it got to the sort of adaptation, like the camera stuff and Slappy, like I felt it did a good job. But this season does it consistently better, which is an improvement. But then we get to The Boy Who Cried Monster. Besides the weird title, few things I feel this episode does really good. Number one, it starts with CJ telling monster, or in this case, ghost stories to his younger sibling. Basically, just to kind of talk about why he didn't perform his delivery, because they set up that he's not.
which is a good throwback in my opinion. I will say that to the old like story in '90s episode was pretty legit because Lucy did that to her very annoying younger brother.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
it
just
just
little
kinda-
references
So I'll
like
give him
that.
props for that.
It just
little
kind of
Yeah,
sprinkles-
little things like that is what makes this season just little things like that. Now it's not even a big thing. A little thing like that makes this season far superior to the first one for those reasons.
Yep, I agree. Well, and also just because he does it to just kind of terrify his sister, his little sister, but also the show is set up that he's not a particularly good delivery driver for his parents' business.
Bro,
And
he eats the food
man.
he's supposed to
eats the
deliver.
food. Yeah, like what the fuck, dude? Like, don't do that.
People do that, man. They do that. Did you see the guy that like does Uber Eats or something, and he was like taking little bits out of each meal and making like a little dish, but then he would like mix it so that looks like it hasn't been touched. I was like, dude,
Well,
I've
that's
never
the thing.
ordered
It's like that's a thing that really
Uber
happens
Eats
with Uber
again.
and DoorDash and Grubhub and all that stuff. So
Pick up your own food, guys.
yeah,
Like, don't do
please.
that.
It's literally, it is worth the car trip. Please, you don't want other people
Yes.
handling your food.
Yeah, you don't know what they've got, where they've been.
But
That could be said for the people who are making your food too, though. Realistically,
Yeah, like the
most
chick that
people
had the
make
I've
food
heard
more
horror
like-
stories about
down
that too.
pants while she
Yeah.
was like cooking, and she like was on video, and I'm like, God damn, that's gonna have some ass flavor now.
Oh God, guys, come on.
Here's that ass.
Anyway, so Boy Cried Monster is a heavily Anthony focused episode, I feel, but it works for the adaptation because CJ is the main kid character here, and he is tasked with going to deliver to Dr. Brewer, and Dr. Brewer is really, really sick, and then CJ sees him with his fucking eyeball hanging out, which is awesome. I just love that. And
That
then
was cool. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I thought at that point Brewer was just completely taken over, and he was going to like turn and have like, this really crazy like monster face.
Mhm.
So just the droopy eye hanging out after he sneezed was kind of funny and a little bit of a surprise at the same time because it was not what I was expecting to happen.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
So
I was like, ooh.
I mean, it's funny though. Like the running gag, which I think is kind of neat.
It's like, he
And
got
I think it's even the
some
last
pie.
line in the show. It was just like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, just looking at like a really horrifying body thing and just being like, oh, that's not good. But no, and then he's putting it back in. Like it again, the body horror is eerie in a lot of scenes. But yeah, so CJ sees this and he goes and tells his mom,
Ooey, folks.
dude, he's
Ooey.
like, Mom, Dr. Brewer's eye was freaking hanging out. So it's like, oh, so now, but they're not going to believe him. But it's actually even more sinister.
this.
But it's more sinister too because he goes back and he does sort of the Mortman thing where he's like being all weird now, and he's just kind of like, oh no, I'm fine. It was like, oh, these kids now.
He's all cleaned up, dressed nice now, and his hair's all slick.
Yeah,
He
he's
doesn't
like
look like
looking
that.
he's looking all good. And then he's like, oh, these kids, they're getting all these crazy ideas these days about monsters. He's like, you should probably keep an eye on him. He's doing like the Mortman thing, which I love. And then later he ends up calling CJ and he's like, hey, I feel really bad. I think I can help you get your job back with your mom. Like, come on by. Like, I'll explain things more. And then he ends up freaking kidnapping him and he ties him up in the basement. And
Which I think is kind of neat actually because they played with the concept of stay out of the basement instead of having like a plant version of Brewer and the human version that's trapped down in the basement. Now it's just like they're in the same body because he doesn't remember calling me. He's like, I called you. He's like, yeah.
He's like going in and
He's
out
like-
of it. He's like,
oh, you should go. And he is like, you should go. And he just grabs him and brings him in. So it's like he's not
well, no, yeah,
in
he's
control of his
like
body
personality
anymore, but
almost.
he's
it starts with him being
Yeah.
like, you should go, and then he's like, run, and then he grabs him. Like, so it's
Like he had a split
mind is
personality.
fighting.
That's like what it was like. Kind
It
of like
was
in
like
that
a
movie.
yeah, like it's like he can see what's happening, but he can't control the driver's seat. Like it's really interesting that they chose that avenue rather than just having Brewer replaced with a plant monster.
Exactly.
So
Now,
I guess
what
it saves on money.
it was.
Don't have to
And-
hire a body double and no CGI to put them in two places, even though the '90s show did it. But
Yeah. But basically, what he ends up doing, and this show, as we said, body horror is great. And one thing they loved doing in this season is vomit. So Dr. Brewer ties CJ up and is like, hey, I just need to do one thing. He grabs a little cup and he just. And then he's like, drink this. And I'm like, oh my God. Because it's like,
It'll taste just fine.
It's almost like doing exactly. It's almost like doing the scene from the 90s episode with the weird green oatmeal stuff, but it's with your vomit.
Pick up your spoons and eat it.
Yeah.
But instead, it's like, just drink this shit.
Yeah,
Like,
drink it. It's like everyone will know.
And even then, like he was like
soon.
hovering over his face and was just going to like
Oh God!
transfer from his mouth to him.
His teeth
he's
are
like,
like,
I'm just gonna feed you like a mother bird feeds her babies. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, that's all he's doing. So yeah, his teeth were black and.
Why does it make me think of Ace Ventura when like he feeds the bird and he's like, "Hungry fella." There you go. And he like gets the little like napkin and like wipes the mouth and goes,
There you go, little fella.
Well, it made me think of that immediately for some reason. Oh God.
It didn't me, but it will now when I watch this again.
but like that was a super uncomfortable.
Man,
Awesome.
I think that's way funnier than Pet Detective. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it is funny.
I love both.
That
Both
whole
are
thing was
fantastic.
just
The rhino scene is the greatest.
gross, sort of like just. It was a really creepy scene, and I thought this episode did really well with that, while also incorporating both Stay Out of the Basement and Girl Cried Monster. I think it's probably my third favorite. I do like part two, Stay Out of the Basement, and Girl Next Door is actually, I think, might be my favorite, and we'll get into that in just a sec. But also, and then the episode ends with all the kids going down in the basement and they see this. And Trey, I think. Oh, yeah, by the way, they bring Trey back. Funnily enough, they find him.
Bring the Trey back.
And he's just like, oh, he's okay. And he ends up going through like this arc where he's like, I'm a changed man. I'm changed. He does start acting less like an asshole. So I at least will give him props for that. But no, so Trey comes in with a crowbar and whacks Dr. Brewer's head off, and then his head's just laying on the ground and being like, oh, hey, everybody. He's just
That's
like...
why David Schwimmer was so perfect, because of his like weird, goofy like voice. I think it just works well for like those kinds of scenes, like having that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very Goosebumps right there, because he's even like still like telling jokes from down there. He's just like, hey, somebody want to give me a hand? And the kids are like just freaking out. They're like, oh my God. It was so good. I'm sorry, guys. Like, the more I talk about like these parts of the show, I'm like, I don't care. You know what? There's flaws, but like, man, I had a good time. Funny enough, like there were just parts where I'm like, this is kind of cool.
Season 3, I hope we get a little bit more of this, and maybe like, I'm just trying to think, like, because like obviously Stay Out of the Basement was like the main focal point. Like, what would season 3 be? What would we pick? Just do Horrorland, for God's sake.
People have said either camp or
when I've talked to people, I was gonna say, when I've talked to people, like I told them, I was like, if they're gonna do something like that, I would really like a full camp theme season, because there's enough camp stories that Stein has done where they could adapt. You could just do them all, really. And then somebody was like, well, they could also do like a whole Halloween season, which of course I would love. But yeah, I mean, the one thing I wasn't really talking about, you could just do a whole Horrorland season. And truthfully, that's what the first season probably should have been, is they could have really taken into the Horrorland book series where you had the haunted mask and you could have Slappy and all this stuff, and they're at Horrorland or whatever. You know, you could figure out a way to make this work. But
so
sadly, I don't think we'll ever get Horrorland movie or series. If we do, I'd be shocked, because the series has already had an episode titled Horrorland, so I don't think they'll do it again.
It was called
At least not
Welcome
this
to
soon.
Horrorland, wasn't it? We need one day.
Yeah, Welcome to Horrorland. Yeah, it was not even the right title.
Oh, Welcome to Horrorland. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you could literally have a camp themed season. So you'd have Camp Night Moon, you could have Ghost Camp, you could have my Camp Jelly Jam, because that could be like your big monster. You could have
That was actually one of the ones that was at the forefront of what some people were saying was Jelly Jam.
Yeah,
because they want to see a live action Buddy.
People just want to see the books that were never adapted at all. So like Ghost Camp and Jelly Jam both have not ever been done. So it's like, give us books that we've never seen.
Even ones like like Fright Camp or Camp Slither, like, you know.
You could do all of them into one. Like, how many do they do per season? Like 5 or 6 different, like.
Mm-hmm. If
So
they
you
can
could
find a way
literally
to
like
incorporate them.
pretty much, like just about every camp book you could incorporate. Like you could do them all rolled into one. You know, so that'd be cool. You could have Uncle Al as a counselor. You could have Buddy as a counselor. You could have like all the counselors are just the different ones from each book, but they're in one place. You
Well,
know,
you can even have it where it's like multiple camps in one area. So it's like maybe
like you have
Jelly Jam,
I mean, think of like Heavyweights.
Yeah,
Heavyweights had multiple camps just right across the lake from each other. You know what I mean? So they could just do the same concept here.
You have Camp Night Moon over here. You have Camp Jelly Jam over here. You have Camp, you know, like all of them, just like different sides of the thing. But then they somehow come to, like the main characters somehow come together.
And then you could even incorporate the Curse of Camp Cold Lake. You know, have the lake in the middle of all these camps.
Yeah, the lake is in the middle. Yeah, exactly. So you have everything.
Ooh. There you go.
That's the center of it all is Cold Lake.
You're welcome to take this off from us, Rob Letterman, because I doubt they'll let you go from Goosebumps franchise for some reason. But I will say at least this season, again, higher marks than the first one. So if you keep on this trend, I may not start the hashtag fire Rob Letterman anymore.
Well, one thing I also want to see more of is what they did in episode 6, The Girl Next Door. So in episode 5, they start showing off this girl named Hannah who takes a liking to Devin in a very creepy way. And of course, it ties in with the ghost next door. And this episode has a heavy found footage. So we knew going in that there was going to be a found footage episode. Thought it was going to be Camp Nightmare, but it actually was Ghost Next Door. And I actually think this might be my favorite episode. I really think the format was done well. It was actually directed by one of the directors of Blair Witch. So it explains why it,
Blair Witch Project, like the original 90s one?
I think so. I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure. But it was done really well. I think the format was really well done. It takes up most of the episode, and it is a way to find out more about the kids that went missing. So you learn more about them without them taking up the entire show. And actually, because Hannah's the one operating the camera, and when they get to the part where that's shown in episode 1, the cold open, she falls into the hole and she starts exploring what is below there, and it's very creepy. There are moments that are genuinely unnerving when she first finds the pods with all the kids in there, and then also the alien creature that's sneaking around.
Yeah, I wish I would have shown that a bit more. I don't. They never really give us a good glimpse of it, obviously, which is fine. Adds to that imagination of what is it kind of a deal. But at the same time, they didn't capitalize on that very much either. It was very isolated to that episode, and then later was like, "What about the monster down there?" She's like, "Oh, I killed it." It's like,
yeah,
okay,
it was
cool.
But I thought that this episode
was it an alien from the ship? Was it mutated person? What the hell was it? I wish they would have given us something.
Yeah, it was not really that's what I was hoping was going to happen, because this episode started explaining some things about what happened back then. So I was like, okay, now we're starting to get to the point where we're finding out more, and it's basically here where it's confirmed that it's aliens. But it was super well done. I thought it was shot really good. I think it's probably the scariest episode. I don't know if you guys agree with that. I thought this one was definitely the one that had the most unnerving nature to it, in a sense.
I don't know. I'll probably wait to make those kind of selections until I actually watch it through again.
Mm-hmm.
when I have my daughter here and we watch it together. I don't know. What it would make sense because you were correct. It is Eduardo Sanchez, and he was the director of the original Blair Witch Project,
Yep.
and he directed this episode.
Cool.
So
I do like the
that
original
would make
Blair Witch,
sense.
even though it's like the most loved and hated horror film, which is interesting.
Which I can kind of see. Like at the time when that film released, it was unique and it was very creepy, and it was, I think, great at the time. But it doesn't hold up very well trying to watch that today.
Yeah.
Because again, I like to introduce my daughter to certain horror and things like that, and she loves horror movies. And I was like, "Oh, you might like this one," because we like some found footage movies. Doesn't hold up very well. She was bored to tears, and I was like, "I get it." I was like,
It's a very divisive sort of movie.
You're not seeing this in the movie theater. It's not one of the first of its kind anymore. It's kind of outdated in terms of what they did in the film, given the budget. I get it.
I like personally
So-
found footage of like things like Late Night with the Devil, which I actually watched recently, and I love
Yes.
that kind
was
of
a good-
found
that was a good-
footage, I think is fantastic.
I think they should do a Slender Man found footage film. I think that would work.
That's what
I
they
remember
should have done for the
Um,
Slender Man movie. So
I'll say I think they did.
They did a movie,
They did
right?
some.
they did a movie.
They
but it
did a
wasn't
Slender Man
found footage.
movie. It
But,
was
like,
terrible.
I
It was
think
a-
it would work better as a found footage movie. Slender Man. I don't know. I think that to me would be better as a found footage film. I don't know. I always
That's
imagine.
why I like the original source material, the Marble Hornets stuff that was out on the internet all those years ago. Those were found footage style, and those were really good.
Well, even the
I remember
style of
watching
the
those with my
Slender Man
friends.
game
It
is
was
like
great.
like I feel like you can make that sort of format in the Slender Man game into like a found footage sort of horror film.
The game was really good too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
there's so
going
many of
back
them out
to-
there, but if we're thinking about the same Slender Man game,
yeah.
then,
But
yeah.
going back to Goosebumps, yeah. So this episode does the found footage
How's
thing.
your kombucha, by the way, Nick? I forgot to ask.
It's just make sure you.
Oh
don't-
no, I'm not drinking kombucha. This is my mango green
Weird
tea.
cup. I was like,
Just make sure whatever you're drinking doesn't come up as a slime.
I do
monster.
have kombucha in my fridge because I do take it, but not very often because I
What
don't
flavor?
like the taste.
What's your flavor of kombucha?
This is a new one I haven't tried yet, though. It's like peach something. I'll have to look at it again.
That might be alright. So far I've only found one I like, and it's the raspberry. And even then, it's not the greatest, but it's
I'm not a
I can
fan
drink
of some
it.
of them either. They're rough.
drink it.
Like I don't know what flavor that girl in the show drinks. She loved it to death though, till she puked up the monster blood.
It was
version of
funny.
it,
She
but
was like, once she puked it up, she was just like, "All right, no more kombucha."
never again.
Like, no.
It
I don't
just-
blame her because usually, like, if I get food poisoning from something, I don't want it again for a long time.
No more Gen Z drink.
It's like the more I think about it, the more there's like little lines that are just kind of funny like that because it's like, okay, you just barfed up all this stuff and you feel like absolute crap, and then you're just like, all right, no more kombucha.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's like something you would hear in like the '90s show. Like, am I crazy for thinking that? I feel like that's the kind of corny
Yes.
writing that you would hear in the '90s show. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm alone on that hill, but yeah. So just to wrap up episode 6, I thought it was really well done. I thought the found footage was great. I think it was a really well done sort of format change for that episode, and I hope to see more of stuff like that. Not just found footage, but just like change it up a little bit. Even episode 7 is sort of shot almost like a 70s horror film. Did you guys get that feeling? Because it's almost like
I kind of did, but I think they were going for that. I think they were going for that vibe with that one because that was the Camp Nightmare episode.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a Camp Nightmare episode. I think that's what they were going for because it was meant to be back in like the 60s, 70s era, if I remember right. I can't remember when the exact date was, but I think it was the late 60s.
Even the set design is kind of like
It was
reminiscent of
69.
almost like Alien. Because like Alien was
It
a
really
70s
was. It was
film.
69.
But
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it was. I'd have to go back and watch it again and see what year it was, but if it was 69.
I think it was 68. So
No, because then they went. Didn't they go like 6 months later? It had
I
to
think
be
it was
60.
no, I think it was like 5 years later. I think it was in the 70s.
74.
They had to basically turn the whole thing into a facility, so it couldn't have taken a few months.
They did that meme for like SpongeBob where it's like 24. I think it's something funny than 24 because we're in 2025. I'm like, they must have been waiting 25 years to be able to like do that on their like social media page because it's like
True.
they can only do it once. They can never do it again.
One thing I will
I've
say
been seeing
about
that meme everywhere. I just thought that was something somebody made up. I didn't know it was actually from SpongeBob, though.
Yeah,
one
it's
thing
like
I will say
one of
about
its iconic ones.
Camp Nightmare is that episode had a lot of. I personally feel it had a lot of similarities to Alien, sort of in the set design and obviously the fact that it deals with aliens, but especially the climax when all hell breaks loose. Like it just sort of has that like just the monsters are just attacking and they're like, no, he's infected, leave him. Like, we got to get out of here. The whole episode is basically a backstory for this one mysterious doctor character that's like lurking about and they're trying to figure out what her deal is. And she's basically the daughter of a scientist who was helming the whole project that was studying the alien creature. And the doctor wanted to just destroy it. Like, he was creating a serum that was going to counteract the pod effects. And then he was going to inject it into the ship and then just kill it for the sake of humanity. But his daughter and the rest of the crew are like, no, we can't. We don't even know what this thing's like priorities are. We don't know if it's even like friendly. And I'm like, the thing literally captured a person and is holding it in a state of suspended animation. So it's like, I don't know. I would kill it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if it has the ability to pod people, if it has the ability to take over people like it did with Brewer, I don't understand why it can't also talk more through those people. Because even those moments, Brewer was in the basement. He was like, "Oh, if you drink this, you'll understand. You'll see what I see." So it's like
he's like, everyone will be us. Everyone will be us.
Clearly, every person infected could technically be almost like a vessel to be talked through to the people. So why not just be like, hey man, I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to get the fuck out of here. How about you open this door
like, just get me
and
out of here?
I'll release this guy. I don't care about this guy.
Yeah.
You know, he was just there. Just open the door and I'm gonna leave, okay? We cool.
That's cool.
No,
that's cool.
can't do that though.
Like, dude, I've been stuck here for 40 years. Like, I'm gonna miss my shows or something. Like, just let me out, all right? Fresh Prince is gonna be on in like 15 minutes. Like, help a brother out.
That's cool.
But no, so obviously 7 and 8. This is the finale of the show, and you're like, okay, so we're gonna be wrapping things up. By the time you get to episode 8, Invasion of the Body Squeezers, as we found out.
Whoa!
This is where everything coincides. So basically, Dr. Brewer is now in one of the pods along with all the kids who disappeared, including Maddie. And the kids basically go to Camp Nightmare and confront the doctor and are like, you better let us, like, save our dad. Like, we're not leaving him. And she's like, okay, I'm going to give you the serum. It'll protect you. And because she's like, I perfected my father's serum. I perfected his formula. Like, it's going to work. So she gives each of the kids one and then one to use on Dr. Brewer. And they go in the hatch.
He was the worst character that they had in this entire show. Worst character. This lady, one, was terrible at her job. Couldn't keep anybody out of that damn facility. Kids got in there multiple times.
She was literally like,
kids,
the Brewer family's been making my life harder. Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. So you suck at your job. And then not only that, if she perfected this serum, she could have easily went down there this entire time and done the job herself if she was really that concerned with that spaceship. But she wasn't. She was like, I'm just going to keep it contained. My dad's down there. There's other pods down there. Hey, kids, why don't you go in there? Go ahead. Go save your dad.
I'm going to trap you in here forever.
I not only chopped up into pieces and carried him out of your house in a suitcase, and then I melted him into black goo because he went back to the source. he might be down there. I don't know if he's.
I did like
doing
that, how
stuff.
when she came to get him, like she just had like a bowling ball bag and put his head in there. Like that was kind of funny.
I had a brief, or not a brief, but a suitcase for all his body parts, and then there's his head, and it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna melt you, reply you, rather than try to save you. I'm just gonna melt you away. Doesn't tell the kids that, mind you. It's like, oh yeah, no, like I murdered your father. He's actually, he's gone. I cut him up into pieces and I melted him. Sounds more sadistic that way, I guess, rather than just he's down that hole, go get him. And then locks the kids in there, which is crazy. What? Like, you give them the shot to protect them, but then you lock them down there. What was the point?
This is definitely where the show starts getting weird with like what the characters' goals are. Like, I will say, like, up until this point, I was getting into it,
especially.
But started getting into the explanation of the aliens and what the goals of this doctor were and how, like everything sort of fit together. It was starting to get sloppy. The overall finale just kind of felt like it was rushed. I feel like, so I said this at the beginning, and I feel like this season should have been the one to have 10 episodes, because I feel like if it had 2 more episodes to maybe flesh things out a little more, explain a few more things, I feel like it would have been a lot better written. Here, it just feels like they had to really, really wrap it up because, okay, Cliff Notes version. The kids go down there, they use the serum on their dad, he comes out, he's fine. And then they have to find a way to get out because the doctor sealed them in. So Trey uses his C+ college education. I thought that was kind of funny because he talks about how he's going to college, but he's just doing average.
Electrical.
Yeah. He's just passing with average grades. So it's like not even that special. But he basically is like, I'm going to use my education. And then he just destroys a breaker box. That's like basically what he does. So they all get out. It's a really tense scene because the spaceship's awake. And it's trying to like get them. It's like using its big long tentacle. And
yeah, for a ship that doesn't want to hurt anybody, it sure has a tendency to.
It's trying to hurt people.
Do the opposite. It's trying to F everybody up.
Yeah. And they end up getting out, and then Brewer ends up going back for all the pod kids. So he brings his brother Matt and all his friends out. And it's like, wait, you can just do that? And everything seems.
And how did he do it so fast?
Yeah, he
did
get
all
really
those
fast.
kids out like within a matter of like seconds.
Yeah, it was very odd, sort of time paradox thing. And at first, it seems like it's like this is how they're ending it. Like they're just all gonna like get out, and there's no repercussions from the doctor.
And it's like the Thanos snap. These kids didn't age in 30 years.
Yeah, that's I will say
all these kids came back from the Thanos snap, and they were all still the same age. Meanwhile, which I thought was a funny joke. I'll give him props on that one too. When Maddie and Stink were talking, and it's like, oh, I'm just eating right and exercising. He's like, it's not working.
Yeah.
There's a new thing that it's not from freaking Avengers as well.
The relationship between Anthony and Maddie is really well done. And I felt that the scene they have where he like they're both in the basement and he sees Anthony for the first time and he's all grown up. I thought that was actually like a really emotional scene. I thought David Schwimmer and the actor of Maddie did a very good job. Because you really feel like that sort of reunion between those brothers. So that was really well done. And everything seems good at first. But then like they're like Ana Ortiz's character is like, you need to come, like we need to go find this doctor lady because there's something's up. And they go back and she apparently has her father there. Like apparently her father is also there too. And she's like, I'm doing this to bring him back. And her father wakes up and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I perfected the formula. He's like, no, you have to let it go. You have to let it go. And then one thing I loved personally is that all the clones are suddenly like, this isn't me, this isn't me. And then they just puke up these alien creatures, the ones from episode 6. But there's like a bunch of them now. So all him and all the kids transform into these aliens.
Well, you know, when they puke, you think it's more like I live in your basement moment. You think they're just.
I was going to say it's like
inside out.
This is
I
the
was like,
closest,
what is happening?
Honestly, if they turned Inside Out, I would have been so happy because I would have been like, oh my God, we got an I Live in Your Basement adaptation. Would have been fitting, personally.
Keep with the basement theme. Just keep going.
But I thought it was kind of cool. And then, and then you have all these alien creatures running around and they abduct the kids. And so Brewer and the cop lady have to go back and save them by releasing the alien ship. And then that allows them to all be released, and then all the kids disappeared, and the scientists end up passing on with the aliens. That was weird.
Love it. Love it.
But so basically it ends with a lot of unanswered questions about why it was doing all this stuff to begin with, why the goop had so many powers, whatever. The ship went away, it fucked off back to wherever it came from. Everything seems cool. Everyone's going to go their separate ways. And the show ends on a note that I thought was very Goosebumps. And that's everyone leaves and Trey's about to go back in his house. And then he vomits black sludge. And he just looks down and is like, that's not good.
Well,
and then the show ends.
No, it didn't end the right way for Stay Out of the Basement. The flowers weren't talking.
Yep.
Yeah, the flowers should have talked.
Trey, I'm your father. I'm your real father.
I'm your real father, Trey.
I'm your father. I'm your father.
I love this ending because it's way better than season 1. Season 1's was, I believe it was Margot brought Isaiah back to life with Kondu's book, and then Kondu apparently was possessing Brat, and I was like, what? What the fuck? How does that even happen? Here, even though it doesn't make sense why Trey's still infected, just the fact that it just ends with him vomiting.
It makes no sense why he was just he was eaten by the bulb, but not eaten, I guess. I don't know. Turn into the mud monster. I'm going to call it that for the moment. The goo monster, I guess I can call it that. And then gets squashed. So he's dead, but somehow absorbs himself into his own car. And then absorbs himself from the sea to the plant life. But then all of a sudden he's totally fine in a hospital bed, catatonic, and his girlfriend's getting hit on in front of him, and they made that whole thing. And then not doctor lady came in to see him, which I didn't quite get either. Maybe she gave him the shot.
I'm thinking that's what happened. That would have shot, and then
that means he would have died based on what happens when any of the alien stuff gets the shot. So then apparently he's fine.
Well, they did the same thing
throughout the whole thing until the end. So that was weird.
Dr. Brewer also gets injected with it too in the pod, and he's fine. So I don't know if maybe it's
so you think, because if Trey's puking black goo, then I'm assuming that Brewer will as well. At some point.
Who knows?
And
who knows what these aliens?
Whatever happened to Maddie getting infected? I have no idea. Or not Maddie, but Devin.
Yeah,
so Devin being affected didn't pay off anything, I don't think, that I can recall. So it was really weird. They did have some loose ends, and things were very rushed in the end. Overall, I would give this second season probably a 7. And that's being a little generous. I might go down to like a 6.5-ish.
That's how I feel.
That's only because I feel like they dropped the ball on a few of what things we just discussed, like the loose ends and how they didn't really wrap things up so well. Maybe you out there in the audience will have a better grasp on this than we had. I've only watched it once through, so maybe I missed some stuff. But overall, just on the first view watching, this is what I'm getting and what the guys are getting from this. There were a few things that were missed, a few things they could have done better, but overall, a massive improvement compared to season one. So I'm not going to complain, honestly, about season two as much, which I'm sure will make you guys happy. Because you guys, some of you out there were not very fond of the fact that we trashed season one so much, but god damn it, it deserved it. It deserved it.
Again, I mean, no, you're absolutely, everything you said there is correct. And as I said, we talked each episode, and this was very enjoyable. But yeah, once you get to the finale, it does start to kind of fall apart with how many plot holes there are and unanswered questions, unexplained aspects. It does bring down the show quite a bit in that sense, because you have a lot of things going for it, and then it kind of drops the ball, and you're just kind of left scratching your head as like, well, wait, why did that happen? Why was the alien good secretly, but it did all this stuff? Like, what are the properties? Why are some characters still like experiencing effects? Like, that's the thing. It's just kind of like, if they had,
why did it take them with them at the end?
Yeah, why did the ghosts go with them? Like, why was that an aspect?
Are they ghosts? I don't even know. They could be actual, like, still alive, but who knows? Because then they turned into alien dog things, and then all of a sudden at the end they were like, "Oh, just kidding, we're back to human form again, but we're gonna leave."
Normal, I guess. But at the same time,
love you, Stink. Take care of my niece and nephew. Tell them I said, hi,
Peace.
bye.
He Stink.
He Stink. Tell mom Tell mom I'm dead. Don't tell her I'm alive or anything.
That never comes back in after episode 6. The whole thing with the mom with dementia, it doesn't come back into play. So whatever, I guess. But no, that's the thing. It's like, this season is very enjoyable. It's a huge step in the right direction, and I hope that season 3 going forward, assuming there will be one, they take the good things from this season,
there will,
and they do away with some of the bad. I hope they get more time to explain things. Don't leave us with unanswered questions. You don't want to be left in a finale with unanswered questions, because that's just, it doesn't make for...
Especially in an anthology season show, where it won't get that...
Yeah, this will not be followed up in season 3. So
they're going to do a book, but I don't know if this book that just came out for pre-order today or yesterday, whenever... is going to wrap up anything more, or if it's just like an adaptation of this season in a book form. I really don't know what the book is yet. I haven't looked into it.
I hope the book explains more about what these 9 episodes
are. Because we said 10 was too many, 8 was just not enough. So Rob will go, all right, give them 9 episodes. 9 episodes.
I think this episode could have done better with 10. I think season 1 should have had 8, and this season should have had 10, because you can use those 2 episodes to explain things further. I feel like that extra time would have done this season better, whereas season 1, I think they just tacked on too much. So that's where
season 3 will be called Goosebumps. Season 3, The Camping.
The Camping. I hope they come up with a better title.
Or like The Sleeping Bag.
I personally don't think The Vanishing is a great title, to be honest, but whatever.
I don't either, because I mean, yes, the kids vanished, and the kids from the past vanished, but did they really? Because they just wrote them off as dead. They kept saying he drowned, he's dead, despite no evidence of bodies or them drowning or anything. It's not like they really went out of their way of saying they just disappeared.
Not to mention the cop lady was hiding videotape for decades.
Yeah, she was hiding evidence.
Like, why would you do that? Like, even Dr. Brewer is like, why would you hide this? Like,
disgrace. He called her a disgrace to the force.
Even when you watch the tape with the rest of the kids, you're still not. I mean, even though they say like, "Oh, I see why she hid it," I'm like, I don't. It's like, why did she hide this tape?
I think it was just her survivor's guilt that was like driving her to bury it, because she didn't want Anthony to see all the horrible things that happened. But it's like, dude, he's living with all this trauma and unanswered stuff. Like, at least show him.
And his mom.
And his mom, yeah, like seriously. But
Like the whole Brewer family is just like distraught and in this really crazy state of, just grief. And you've got this tape and you could have presented it to the authorities or something to have something done, but no, no,
But-
I'm gonna hide it.
regardless, there's a lot of plot holes. There's a lot there's a lot of just those things that kind of make the finale fall apart. So unfortunately, it could have stuck the landing. It didn't. And on top of also just bringing a bunch of things we didn't like from season one, the romance, the melodrama, like again, it was toned down. Thankful for that, but I just wish they weren't there at all. Like, just do away with them. And on top of that, please, if you do season three, don't do a whole, looking into the past mystery sort of thing. Do something a little bit original.
Yeah, I've done it twice now. We need a little something fresh.
Yeah, we need to stop going into the whole, oh, this thing happened in the past and it's happening now in the future. Like, do something different. Just keep it all in the present. Because that whole thing's getting old now. And
Or just keep it as a period piece. Like, it doesn't even have to be the present.
yeah,
I don't care if your
Honestly,
camp theme is like all done in the late 70s, early 80s.
keep it in the 90s.
I don't care. Make it in the 90s. I don't care. Keep it in that era, though.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't
I
have
like
to bounce.
I like that idea of camp. Like, because if they did 10 episodes for season 3, they could have like the first 5 episodes could be like each camp book. So episode 1, you focus on Camp Night Moon's camp. Episode 2, Ghost Camp. Episode 3, Jelly Jam Camp. Episode 4, Fright Camp. Like, and then somehow they all come together in the middle episode, and then I don't know. Then you have the big whatever happened. Like
Or
those
just-
back up, they're all
Just
together.
do
to
an
fight
entirely
whatever.
original story with the Goosebumps characters. Like, don't even make it like adaptation. Just take the Goosebumps characters and locales and just make an original plot. Like, don't feel like you have to make an adaptation. If you can't make an adaptation work, don't do it. Like sometimes you can just make it something original. I don't know. It feels like they're trying to double dip still. And
I want chicken.
make a whole season chicken. Like literally, I will watch the shit out of
Oh,
that.
chicken.
And they start clucking in class.
I'm
That
the
was
same.
like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that would be the best episode if they had that. And it would have definitely worked for a season 3 episode where they're just clucking in class, like trying to talk to the teacher, like, Miss, like,
Look.
Bjorn,
Cool.
what are your final thoughts on the Vanishing?
6.25 out of 10.
Brought up because of the episode 8 title.
Yeah. Like, now that I know what that is, I'm like, okay, that made it marginally even better again. So maybe next season I'll have a 6.85 or a 7.
Oh,
Maybe. I will say I'm very happy to see that the general consensus matches what we have. There are obviously people who don't like this season as much as we do. I've seen some people
Green
say
Rant
that
gave it a
season
4
one-
out of 10. I was like, what?
No, some people have said that they prefer
hated
season
it.
1 over this
Screen Rant.
season, and I will personally
Screen Rant.
never understand
I don't
it.
take Screen Rant at all. It's like Rotten Tomatoes. Like,
Well, not
no.
even
take
just
any of
critics.
their-
I mean, I'm talking like people in the community do consider season 1 better. And look, it's all a matter of opinion. Everyone's entitled to like what they like. I personally will not understand it though.
Even if it's wrong.
Season 1, I don't find it.
But the whole consensus seems to be similar in that it was a major improvement. But it seems to be around the 5, 6, 7 out of 10. I haven't seen anyone give it like an 8. Certainly not a 9 or a 10. Nobody's
I
going
think the overall IMDb ranking too for episodes, I think episode 1 got the lowest, but that's still a 7 out of 10. And I think the finale, even though like we don't care for it as much as the other episodes, I think was the highest rated one, if I remember right. That could have changed since I last looked, but I think it was like an 8. The rest were still in the 7 to 8 range. So I mean, the general consensus, at least on IMDb scores for each episode, are pretty good.
It seems like season 1 was way more of the divisive one. This one seems to be a lot more people are on the same page. So it's a tale of two different seasons. And
Will we
every
get
single
season
way.
3 though?
So
I think that's a
who knows?
generational thing too. If we look
And-
at the age group, probably who liked season one uh, over season two, it's probably a younger audience
Mhm.
because I can definitely see season one. That's who they were trying to reach out to more, rather than the Goosebumps, fandom over the 30 years. Whereas this season, I can see try to reach multiple, especially with like certain like scenes where it was dialogue or scene settings, even the music. Like
Definitely
we
the
mentioned
music.
with System of a Down. I know they had some in the first season too, but they really, really heavily played on more current stuff in the first season and more of the like hip hop rap in that first season, if I remember right. I could be wrong,
Mhm.
but this season they seem to try to cater to more and really try to bridge that gap, I guess. So I think if we look at the age groups who prefer season one, you're probably going to find it's a lot of younger, like kids, early teens.
Yeah.
Who were probably liking season one,
But
but
who knows?
we'll see.
I guess one thing
That's
more
my
that I
thoughts.
can bring up is that I don't know if this is going to get a third season. I feel like this season definitely seems like it had more like, I don't want to say hype. It had more advertising. I saw a lot more of it this season than compared to last. I don't know if we're going to get a third season. If we do, I do still
I think we
hope
will.
that they improve. Like take the good things and like get rid of the bad things. Personally, I really wish they would just kind of drop the whole like trying to be hip with Gen Z. And I mean, I would certainly love them to do a full anthology, but I don't know if that's going to happen, but I would certainly hope so. This season was really enjoyable, but it's got a long way to go before I can call it a worthy Goosebumps adaptation. And I feel a lot of people will agree with me. It only has bits and pieces where I feel like it feels like Goosebumps, as opposed to the whole show feeling like it. So if they do a season
Yeah, I
three,
mean, if you separate it, like I think I might have mentioned to you before, if we separate it as a show, because it's actually enjoyable and watchable compared to season one, in my opinion, I give it that 6.5 maybe. But as a Goosebumps show, maybe only like a 4.5,
I would
because
probably
that's
say
about
so.
how much references were in there roughly and things you could point out. Now, again, when I watch this a second time, I may find more, but just what I caught on the initial surface level airing of watching this wasn't enough in there to make it feel like Goosebumps or to consider it a true Goosebumps adaptation of the source material.
They
So
got a
yeah,
little
I'd probably
closer.
say a 4.5. Yeah, season one was like a 2,
Yeah,
maybe.
it
That
was
might
a
have been less
one.
than that. So
But
yeah, that's
but
probably
they
a
did
1.
get a little closer, but they really need to like lock in. And I mean, even if that means like a change in crew or like writers or even, higher ups like Mr. Rob Letterman, who's been stapled to this franchise since
Hashtag
2015.
fire Rob Letterman.
It just take the good, get rid of the bad, and improve with season three. If there's going to be a
Maybe they'll
season,
approach us for season 3 this time and be like, what book should we do?
hey, we
You know what?
I want to give you guys some pointers.
What I want is something we should have got in the 90s, and that is a Welcome to Dead House entire show, like season, but every episode directed by Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
Honestly, somebody brought up in the
Awesome.
in the Goosebumps
Be awesome.
Discord server I'm in the idea of a Goosebumps show where every episode is directed by a different director, like almost do like an anthology like that, almost like how Creepshow's done. Like that would be fantastic. I would love to see something like that. I'm just
like Goosebumps Welcome to Dead House. The third
Yeah.
season.
so I
Well,
feel
I
like
mean, yeah, I mean, Welcome to Dead House, or if they are going to do this whole season kind of like they're doing now, I mean, they're already doing that since,
The
we just
haunting,
talked about
vanishing.
how the Blair Witch Project, Eduardo Sanchez, or whatever, I can't remember his name now, the director from Blair Witch did an episode of this season. They could do that. They could already do that. I mean, they are doing it. It's just we would like to see more of that in the style of those directors. So get Del Toro, get maybe Sam Raimi.
I'd love to see Sam Raimi do something like that.
I think that'd be kind of neat to see a version he could do of maybe like Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. I think that'd be right up his alley.
Great.
So
I'd love to see that. That'd be wonderful.
Things like that, they could do it.
But I guess to put a nice little bow on it all, we enjoyed the season certainly more than we thought we were going to. So take that for what you will. There are it's very flawed. There are many plot holes, and the finale may make or break the season for you. But we had a good time. It was enjoyable. It was certainly better than season 1. It is a flawed step in the right direction, I would say. And I guess our general consensus score is about a 6.5 out of 10. So
6.5 to 7, yeah, like we're in there.
6.28 or whatever you said.
This way,
whatever you
it's
said.
passed. You got a C minus.
It is above average, so we will say that. But check it out for yourself, and obviously let us know in the comments below. What did you think of Goosebumps: The Vanishing? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think it's better than season 1, or do you think season 1 is better? If the latter, please tell us why, because I'm very interested to know. But
if you made it all the way to the end of this very long podcast episode, then you definitely deserve to have your opinion down in the comments.
Yes,
because I know this one ran a little long.
Because we'd love to know. But yeah, see it for yourself and make your own opinion and let us know, because I don't know if this is going to be a divisive show or not, but so far it seems like it's pretty not divisive. But yeah, just let us know in the comments below. We're very excited to see what you guys think, and hopefully going forward with this reboot series, things just get better and better. That's all we can ever hope for. So that's it. That is that for Goosebumps: The Vanishing, and hope to see better from the future. But for what we got, it was pretty okay. It was above average.
By season 3, 4, or by season 4, 5, if we get that far, this has to be like a 10 out of 10 show.
Oh, I certainly hope so. Hopefully we can one day look back and be like, you know what? It took a while, but we got there in the end. So
season 5 was just so perfect.
Yeah. That chicken adaptation was amazing.
It's like they could take the worst book but make it the best season. Like, who knows?
Yeah, and they did.
Well, they already did that with Go Eat Worms. So
hey, they made the writer of
Chicken will be an award-winning episode.
They made the
imagine like
writer of Go Eat Worms the head writer for this season, so they were doing something right there. But yep. So those are our thoughts on Goosebumps: The Vanishing, and with that, we are going to end this episode of Goosebumps Crew off here. Thank you guys for watching this very long episode, and once again, leave your comments down below. Let us know what you thought of Goosebumps: The Vanishing. It's out now on Disney Plus and Hulu, so check it out if you haven't already. With all that said, make sure, as always, you follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Fan and Sean, respectively. If you like today's episode, make sure you have a like and comment. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on our audio platforms and social medias. All those links are in the description below, so check them out. We'll have a brand new episode of the podcast for you next week, but until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, and from all of us here, we want to wish you all, as always, to take care, stay safe, eat your vegetables, and have a very scary day.